Metal Gear freaking Solid. Next to Metroid, it's my all-time favorite video game series. These games have a certain charm to them and really make themselves stand out from shooters of today, where most of them don't seem to give two shits about character development or good writing. You guys are all familiar with the main protagonists of the series, all the internet memes that go around, and of course Dara Ó Briain's stand-up act at Live of the Apollo about Metal Gear Solid. What is there that people don't already know about the Metal Gear games? It's currently one of the biggest franchises in video game history, and while new games for it aren't released too often, you'll still see many people playing it today. We're going to be doing a 6-part marathon this time instead of the usual 4. This is a franchise I've been wanting to talk about for quite some time now, and thanks to my Elgato game capturing device, I can finally go over these games. And seeing as we've just had Ground Zeroes come out not too long ago, I think now may be the perfect time to do it. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my marathon of Metal Gear Solid. Now surprisingly, I didn't become a Metal Gear Solid fan until around 2008, as the only one I owned at the time was the third game subtitled Snake Eater. To begin with, I thought that while the game seemed appealing enough, I really didn't know what I was doing because I wasn't familiar with all the techniques that you could pull off to the enemies. I sucked at this game back then, and you know what? I've only gotten slightly better at it several years later. Despite me not being very good at the game though, I found myself enjoying it more and more as the game went on. The way I was introduced to the Metal Gear Solid series, however, is a little embarrassing. Like I said, it was 2008 when I got Snake Eater for my PS2, but how did I know about the franchise in the first place? Through Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Yeah, I don't know how the hell these games managed to get under my radar for so long, aside from the first game, where I was like 3 at the time it came out. But the main character Solid Snake seemed like a rather obscure placement to put in the Smash Bros. Series, and I was curious to see what game franchise he was from and what they were like. And I'm so glad that I did, because I love these games to death. But I've bored you enough with the gushy backstory, let's move on to the review. Nowadays people will think that the Metal Gear Solid series made its debut on the original PlayStation, but it actually made its first appearance in 1987 on a Japanese computer called the MSX2, simply called Metal Gear. Hi, Kyle Reese from Terminator, didn't know you were in these games. The creator of the Metal Gear series is a very eccentric man called Hideo Kojima, and was published by Konami, which hopefully should be no stranger to us thanks to the likes of Castlevania, Contra, Gradius, and that. Before he came up with the idea for Metal Gear, Mr. Kojima created a couple of successful adventure games like Snatcher and an interactive movie adventure game called Policenauts. To this day, Kojima is named by fans and industry experts as one of the most influential and innovative video game directors of all time. But does the first Metal Gear still hold up today? That's the big question. Now keep in mind that I'm not going to be going through every single Metal Gear game in existence in this marathon. Some sacrifices will have to be made, mainly the handheld games and Metal Gear Rising. If you're also hoping that I'd cover the notoriously awful NES ports of the first 2 Metal Gears, then you're going to be pretty disappointed because I won't be covering those either. Let's just keep it simple and stick with the MSX Metal Gears for now. The plot is pretty basic stuff. A weapon of mass destruction has been found being constructed inside a secret base called Outer Heaven, and a special forces unit called Foxhound sends out their best agent, codenamed Gray Fox, to infiltrate the fortress and investigate what's going on. A few days later, Foxhound lose contact with Gray Fox, and their commander, called Big Boss, sends out a rookie under the name Solid Snake. I swear to God, if I hear any more erection jokes, someone's gonna be shot. Lord knows what makes Big Boss think that a new recruit could complete the mission when a veteran couldn't do it, but that doesn't matter now. It's Snake's job to search around Outer Heaven, find Gray Fox, and finally the weapon of mass destruction. The game plays sort of like a top-down version of Metroid, where you have to explore the entire base, locate equipment in certain rooms, and use that equipment to further investigate Outer Heaven. When you begin the game, you're pretty much given nothing to help you, which is really lousy on Foxhound's part, but this is able to clearly show off the main mechanic of the game. Metal Gear is all about sneaking. I would normally say that you'll need to use strategic planning in order to bypass the guards, but as for this game, they're as blind as a bat. The only way you'll ever get caught is if you walk directly in front of them. You're able to walk beside them, but basically if you're on the same grid line as them, then you're caught. Which is also the debut of the iconic exclamation mark and noise that shows up when that happens. However, the original Metal Gear has a weird mechanic of its own with the exclamation points. 1 exclamation point will mean that you can get away from the guards by running off screen, whereas 2 exclamation marks will mean that the guards will keep following you. You see, Metal Gear was originally meant to be an action game, but because of the MSX2's limitations for on-screen bullets and enemies, Kojima decided to scrap the action aspect and make it a stealth game, where he was apparently inspired by The Great Escape. Like I mentioned earlier, you need to acquire the weapons yourself, but even when you get the handgun as your first weapon, you really can't use it because it makes too much noise. You have to wait until you find the silencer, which also goes for the machine gun, the second weapon you find in the game. You'll also eventually get some heavy firepower, like a grenade launcher, remote-controlled missiles, mines, and plastic explosives. But aside from occasionally using the grenade launcher, I find a number of these weapons pretty situational, as I've never felt the need to use them on the regular mooks. I guess if you're feeling experimental, then it may provide some use, but I can't really guarantee it. In some of the rooms, you'll also come across hostages that you can rescue and can sometimes give you helpful information, but other times they don't do jack. Alright, if you save a certain number of hostages, then you receive a better ranking title, increasing your health a bit and allowing you to carry more items. Items themselves range from food that can restore your health, to a large number of key cards that allow you access to certain doors, to items you only need to use in certain rooms, to one-use items like the enemy's uniform and the parachute, with the most iconic of the items being Snake's handy cardboard box, that while standing still can make yourself invisible to enemies. One item that's really annoying to use though is the gas mask. You see, like I said, you need to use key cards to activate almost every single door, but if you don't know that there's going to be a room full of gas afterwards, you'll unwillingly lose some health before you can react, so very quickly you'll need to put on the gas mask. That's not all though, you then need to waste even more health by selecting the key card again and activating the other door. It sounds very minor, I know, but this is something that'll gradually become more annoying as the game goes on. It's also impossible not to get caught in some areas, which makes trying to get a low alert count all the more infuriating. There's no way of telling where a guard's going to be in the next screen, so you just have to take a shitty guess and pray to God that you don't get spotted. And there are some places where you can't avoid being caught and you'll instantly have enemies ganging up on you. What kind of crap is that? By the end of the game, I got caught a total of 95 times. Well, according to the game anyway, it seems like an over-exaggeration to me. But the point is that not many of those alert phases were just me being reckless. As hard as it is to get by the enemies though, the boss battles are ridiculously easy. They use the same attack pattern over and over again, and they don't really take a lot of hits. So as soon as you figure out how to kill them, you'll be seeing those bosses fall like a stack of dominoes. There are also a few moments in the game that you would have absolutely no idea what to do without using the internet or becoming extremely bored. You do sometimes get vague hints from Big Boss on your radio, and you can even contact other people by tuning into the right frequency that some of the hostages will give you, but even then, they don't really do a whole lot to help you. Particularly when having to go through your entire keycard collection and trying every single one until the door opens. Especially when you're trying to escape from enemies, this can become incredibly frustrating. That's just one example of the bullshit puzzle solving that's in this game. The most obscure one I found is where you need to punch indistinguishable walls. Now when you first do it, when you get captured and thrown into a jail cell, you do get a call from Big Boss where he gives you a hint to check on the walls, but in a room like this where you don't have any help whatsoever, how in the holy mother of God would you know to do this? This isn't clever puzzle solving at all. All you're really doing is just going through a trial and error process and having to search every single possible room that you can get in, which not only means a lot of backtracking is involved and having to check through every single floor, but there's no map to help you figure out where you're going, which means that you'll get lost a lot. I wouldn't say that it's quite as bad as the original Metroid and Zelda, but I definitely would say that thanks to the reuse of the floor and wall graphics, most of the rooms in each floor look very similar to one another and can make you really confused as to where you're going. Lastly, aside from Snake and Big Boss, the characters in this game are extremely flat. Even with Snake and Big Boss, we're not given any backstory about them or anything about their personality at all. And since everybody apart from Big Boss barely talks to you, if at all, this leads to some pretty dull characters that won't appear in the rest of the series. And thanks to their extremely vague advice when you talk to them on the radio, this also makes them very useless. Not even the bosses are well developed. They just suddenly appear as soon as you enter the room they're in, which if you play the later games may come as a huge disappointment. So once you get to the area where you have to get captured and break through a wall, on the other side you find Grey Fox. Grey Fox will tell you that the weapon of mass destruction is a walking nuclear-equipped tank called Metal Gear, which allows Outer Heaven to drop nukes anywhere they please. He also tells Snake that he needs to locate Metal Gear's developer, Dr. Drago Petrovich Madnar, so that he can tell him how to destroy it. So you've then got to backtrack all the way to where Dr. Madnar is being held, unless if you got to the fake one that activates a trap, where he refuses to tell you how to destroy Metal Gear unless you rescue his daughter Ellen. So this means more walking around Outer Heaven until you find Ellen, and then you have to backtrack all the way to Dr. Madnar again, where he'll tell you that you need to place plastic explosives on Metal Gear's legs in an extremely contrived order, which will then destroy it. On our way to Metal Gear, we keep getting warnings from, oh god damn it, now I've got to save Dr. Madnar again. Wait, if I've already got the sequence to destroy Metal Gear, does that mean I can leave him and Ellen? Anyway, on our way to Metal Gear, we keep getting warnings from Big Boss, which either lead us into traps or a barrage of enemies. Then he starts acting very strangely by constantly telling you to abort the mission and turning off your MSX console, or in my case, a PS3. Trust me, we're going to be seeing a lot more fourth wall breaking in the later games. This is nothing. When you get near Metal Gear and save a hostage nearby, he'll tell you that the person in charge of Outer Heaven is none other than Big Boss himself. This may not come as a shock nowadays, especially if you played the Solid games before this, but back then this was considered pretty deep stuff. So at last we finally get to Metal Gear, which is actually kind of a lame final boss battle. It doesn't move at all, and the only things that attack you are lasers that move along the walls. Like what Dr. Madnar said, you need to place plastic explosives on Metal Gear's legs in a specific order. But here's the problem. Let's talk about the ranking system again. So you need to rescue a number of hostages in order to rank up and carry more items, right? Well, what I haven't shown you is that you're actually able to kill the hostages as well. And you need a total of 16 plastic explosives in order to destroy Metal Gear, which means that if you didn't rescue enough hostages in the game and there's no way to save more, then you're pretty much fucked and you need to start the entire game all over again. We're starting to reach Mega Man 1 territory. So Metal Gear blows up after taking many explosives, and now we've got to clear out before Outer Heaven erupts. Just as we're about to leave though, Big Boss himself appears and informs Snake that he was originally sending him to Outer Heaven to gather false information. About what, I don't know. But that doesn't matter now, Snake has accomplished too much and now we have to stop Big Boss, whom like the other boss battles is piss easy. All you need to do is fire your rocket launcher every so often, hide behind cover, and do the same thing over and over again until he dies. The game's not over after that though, we then need to climb the right ladder in order to escape. For some strange reason, if you use the cigarettes at this part, then the timer will increase a bit. Not that you really need it, but still, that's rather odd. Snake manages to escape Outer Heaven, and as soon as it explodes, there's already a news report about it, and that's where the game ends.
Hey, wait a minute. I left Dr. Madnar and Ellen in there. Oops.
After the credits though, Snake gets another call from Big Boss saying that he's still alive and swearing for vengeance. That's one hell of a body he's got, considering that he's just taken several rockets to the face and survived. Lordy, this game has not aged well at all. It's definitely aged more gracefully than the original Zelda and Metroid, and I suspect that with enough time, aside from the breakable walls, I can at least figure out where I could probably go. But this was the granddaddy of stealth video games, and it certainly shows, because it's not something that you can go back to multiple times and still get a sense of enjoyment. Plenty of other sneaking games have further expanded upon this original idea, and has for the most part made it even better. The graphics look at best okay for a late 80s game, and I don't really have a whole lot to say about the music, as throughout most of the game you'll be hearing the theme of Tara, which is not a bad tune, but it may or may not make you lose your mind until you get to the boss music, the escape sequence, and the credits theme, which even those aren't that memorable. If you're curious as to how the Metal Gear series started and want to experience Solid Snake's first mission, then go ahead and try it out. You can find it nowadays in either Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence, the HD collection, or the recently released Legacy collection. But if you're new to the series or just an average gamer, I'd say give this one a pass. With that said, I'll give the game around a 6.5 out of 10, standing for really? That's the best codename you're gonna give him?
I was also going to talk about Metal Gear 2 in this video, but it seemed that I had a lot more to say about it than I intended, which as a result would have made the video much longer. But it's not the end of the world if I make two separate videos, so when we next meet, we'll be looking at the sequel to the original game titled Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake for the MSX2. My name's Josh Smith, I appraise the treasure and I pick apart the trash. See you guys later.